I knew something was off the moment I uploaded my first video to the channel. Mr. Horror Story was supposed to be a haven for my twisted ideas, a place where I could explore the darker side of humanity through stories. But what started as a simple horror project quickly spiraled into something far more sinister. It began innocently enough, my subscribers surged overnight, far beyond what I expected. Comments rolled in, begging for more grotesque tales. Then came the email, "Your stories inspire us. Want to see them come to life?" Attached was a link to a private, unlisted YouTube video. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. What I saw turned my stomach, a man strapped to a chair, sobbing, as someone carved his screams into reality with a jagged knife. The scene mirrored a story I'd written a week prior. I tried to dismiss it as a sick coincidence, but then more links appeared in my inbox. Each video depicted brutal tortures pulled straight from my imagination. One involved a woman being forced to swallow shards of glass, another showed a man buried alive in a coffin rigged with cameras. Every scream, every drop of blood, felt like a piece of my soul being ripped apart. When I tried to stop uploading, the messages became threatening: "Keep posting, or you'll star in the next story." In desperation, I went live to warn my subscribers about what was happening. Midway through the stream, my screen flickered. A masked figure appeared, holding a bound and gagged woman. My blood ran cold. It was my girlfriend, Emma. The chat exploded with comments, some cheering, others pleading. The masked figure leaned close to the camera, whispering, "Your viewers demand authenticity. Let's give them a finale." I was forced to narrate her torment, my voice shaking as they dragged a blade across her skin, carving the words of painful truth into her chest. The audience reveled in the horror, their thirst for violence insatiable. When it was over, Emma's lifeless body slumped forward, and the screen went dark. My channel was deleted the next day, but I still hear their voices in my head, the cheers, the laughs, the screams. I am writing this now as a warning. If you find a channel named Mr. Horror Story re-emerge, don't subscribe. Don't watch. Because the next story might be about you, the days after Emma's death into a haze of guilt and fear. I deleted every trace of my online presence, but the damage was done. The masked figure's voice haunted my dreams, a low, guttural whisper that echoed, "You're one of us now." One night, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a blood-stained USB drive. Against every ounce of common sense, I plugged it into my laptop. The folder contained hundreds of files, unedited footage of torture sessions, each more grotesque than the last. My heart sank when I realized these weren't just random victims. They were YouTubers, creators whose channels had gone mysteriously silent over the years. As I scrolled through the videos, one file stood out, "Your finale.mp4, my hand trembled as I clicked it open. The video showed me, asleep in my bed, filmed from the corner of my room. A timestamp in the corner revealed it had been recorded just hours earlier. My breath hitched as the camera zoomed in on my face, and the same masked figure from before leaned into the frame. "It's time for your final story." I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and bolted the doors, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was a game, and I was their latest pawn. The first attack came at midnight. My power flickered, and my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a live stream on a channel I'd never subscribed to, a painful truth. The screen showed a dark room illuminated by a single swinging bulb. Bound and gagged in the chair was my younger brother, Eric. His muffled screams tore through me as the masked figure stepped into view, holding next story, told live. Write, or he burns. I had no choice. They demanded I script the torture in real time, typing each line into the chat while they carried it out. The heat of the blowtorch glowed on screen as I shakily wrote, "He begs for mercy, but it falls on deaf ears." I thought they'd stop after Eric, but I was wrong. Over the next few days, my torment escalated. Random strangers from my past, an old teacher, a childhood friend, a barista I barely knew, became their victims. Each one brought closer to death as I watched helplessly, the stories ripped from my darkest imaginings. Then came the final twist. The masked figure revealed themselves. It was Emma, her pale, lifeless eyes stared back at me, but there was no soul left behind them. She moved with jerky, unnatural motions, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. The voice behind the mask, deep and distorted, spoke directly to me. "She's ours now. And soon, so will you be." Desperate, I fled my apartment, but the world outside was no safer. Every billboard, every screen, played the live stream of my life unraveling. Strangers pointed at me in horror, their phones buzzing with notifications. Watch the final story unfold live only on A Painful Truth. Cornered and exhausted, I realized there was only one way out. I set up my own live stream, titled The End of Mr. Horror Story. My face appeared on screen. Pale and drenched in sweat, "This is my confession," I began, my voice trembling. I created these stories, and now they've consumed me. To anyone watching, turn it off. Don't give them the audience they crave. Before I could finish, the door behind me creaked open. The masked figure stepped into view, Emma's lifeless body dragging a rusted blade across the floor. Finish the story. Or die. I turned to face her, tears streaming down my face. The chat exploded with cheers and jeers as the figure raised the knife. In my final act of defiance, I shut the laptop, cutting it. When the knife plunged into my chest, I felt the pain explode like fire, but it didn't kill me. Instead, I woke up in a cold, sterile room, strapped to a chair. Bright, buzzing fluorescent lights burned my eyes, and the coppery stench of blood clung to the air. Monitors lined the walls, each screen playing my live stream on repeat. My voice echoed back at me, "This is my confession, welcome to the next chapter," a voice rasped, distorted by a voice modulator. I turned my head and saw them, the masked figure, now dressed in a bloodstained apron, their gloved hands gripping a toolbox. "Your viewers love you. Now it's time to repay their loyalty." The toolbox creaked open, revealing a collection of tools, scalpels, pliers, syringes filled with ominous black liquid. The first cut came without warning. A scalpel dragged across my forearm, slow and deliberate. My scream echoed through the room, but the cameras mounted around me didn't stop recording. "Feel it," the figure hissed. "Pain is the price of fame." The screens flickered, showing the chat in real time. Thousands of comments flooded in, cheering, laughing, demanding more. "Turn the knife," one user typed. Another wrote, "Rip the nails off next," and they obeyed. One by one, my fingernails were torn free with pliers. Blood dripped onto the floor, pooling beneath me as my screams dissolved into hoarse, gasping sobs. Days blurred into an endless cycle of torture. They kept me alive just enough to feel every ounce of pain. A branding iron pressed against my back, searing the words "A Painful Truth" into my skin. My fingers were smashed with a hammer until the bones splintered. Every act was filmed, edited, and uploaded. I saw the titles flash on the monitors: "The Truth Burns," "Screams You Can't Ignore," "Live and Raw," "Mr. Horror Story Unveiled." Each video garnered millions of views. I became their star attraction, a twisted mascot for their horrifying day. They changed the game. They wheeled in another victim, a girl no older than 17, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her name was Sarah, and she was one of my most loyal subscribers. "Write her story," the figure demanded, handing me a pen and a sheet of paper. My hands trembled as I stared at Sarah, her wide eyes pleading with me to stop this nightmare. I can't," I croaked, my voice broken. The figure leaned close, the metallic scent of blood wafting from their mask. "Write, or watch her die." With shaking hands, I began to write, detailing her torture step by agonizing step. The figure followed my script to the letter, breaking her fingers, slicing her skin, and forcing her screams to echo through the room. But Sarah's eyes burned with defiance, even as the pain consumed her. "Don't. Give them what they want," she whispered through bloodied lips. Her words sparked something inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of rebellion. When the masked figure left the room to upload the footage, I turned to Sarah. "If we're going to die, let's make it count." She nodded, and together, we formulated a plan. The next time the figure returned, I lunged. Despite my broken body, I tackled them to the ground, ripping the mask free. What I saw froze me in place. It wasn't just one person. Beneath the mask was a rotating face, one moment male, the next female, then something unrecognizable, like a kaleidoscope of human features. The figure shoved me off, but Sarah was ready. She grabbed the branding iron and drove it into their chest, eliciting an inhuman screech. The figure collapsed, their body convulsing. We ran, darting through the labyrinth of blood-streaked halls. Every wall was lined with screens displaying past victims, their eyes frozen in eternal agony. The echoes of their screams followed us, a grim reminder of the horrors we'd endured. We burst into a control room filled with monitors and servers. This was it, the heart of A Painful Truth. Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed a crowbar and smashed the equipment, sparks flying as the screens went dark. But then, the alarms blared, a distorted voice boomed through the speakers. You can't stop the truth. You are the truth. The doors slammed shut, trapping us inside. The screens flickered back to life, showing live footage of countless others trapped in similar rooms, their screams echoing in unison. As the room filled with smoke, I realized the painful truth. This wasn't just about me. A painful truth was a machine, a network of horror fueled by the darkest corners of humanity. Even if we destroyed this place, it would rise again somewhere else, but I wasn't going to let them win. With the last of my strength, I pulled Sarah close and whispered, if we're going down, we're taking them with us. Together, we ripped open a gas line and struck a spark. The explosion tore through the facility, engulfing it in flames. Some say a painful truth disappeared that night. Others claim the channel still exists, hidden in the darkest corners of the web, where new victims are forced to perform for a bloodthirsty audience. As for me, I'm still here, scarred and broken, waiting for the day they come back to finish what they started. And if you're listening this, don't look for the channel. Because once you see the truth, there's no escaping it. The explosion didn't kill me. It should have, but instead, I woke up in the charred remnants of the facility. My ears rang, and my body screamed with pain. Sarah was nowhere to be found, and I hoped she'd made it out alive. But then I noticed the screens, despite the fire, some of them still flickered, faint and glitching. A distorted voice crackled from the speakers, the truth cannot die. Panic surged as I stumbled to my feet. The monitors displayed new footage. Sarah, bound and gagged, her eyes wide with terror. She was back in another room, and the masked figure stood beside her, untouched by the flames. This wasn't over. Desperation drove me forward. I limped through the smoldering hallways, ignoring the searing pain in my leg. The facility seemed endless, an ever-shifting maze of corridors and dead ends. Every corner I turned revealed fresh horrors, rooms filled with bodies, each one a victim of the channel's depravity. In one room, a man hung from the ceiling, his limbs contorted at unnatural angles. His eyes followed me, still alive, whispering, "Don't let them win." But I was running out of time. I found Sarah in a room much like the one where I'd been tortured. Her arms were strapped to a chair, blood dripping from fresh wounds carved into her skin. The masked figure loomed over her, holding a drill that whirred menacingly. "You tried to destroy us," the voice rasped. "Now, you'll both become part of the story forever." I didn't think. I grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and swung it with all my strength. The figure staggered but didn't fall. Instead, they turned to me, their head tilting unnaturally. "You'll have to do better than that." The fight was brutal. The figure moved with inhuman speed, dodging my attacks and landing blows that left me gasping for air. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. In the chaos, Sarah managed to free herself. She grabbed a shard of glass from the floor and plunged it into the figure's side. Black liquid oozed from the wound, and the figure let out an ear-splitting screech. "You think this will end it? The truth is eternal." The lights flickered, and the room seemed to warp around us. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming ghostly faces that screamed silently, "Destroy the server." Sarah shouted, pointing to a glowing console in the corner. I sprinted to the console, my vision blurring from the pain. The screen displayed a countdown. "Next livestream begins in 5 minutes. Frantically, I smashed at the controls, trying to shut it down. The figure lunged at me, but Sarah tackled them, giving me just enough time to grab a nearby fire extinguisher and bring it crashing down on the console. Sparks erupted, and the countdown froze at 30 seconds. "No!" The figure shrieked, their voice distorting into a cacophony of screams. The walls trembled as the entire facility began to collapse. Sarah and I barely made it out as the building crumbled into a heap of rubble. We stood in silence, watching the flames consume the remains of a painful truth. "Is it really over?" Sarah whispered. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything we'd endured. I stayed off the internet, refusing to even glance at a screen, but one night, my phone buzzed with a notification. Against my better judgment, I looked. It was a live stream. The channel name read, Mr. Horror Story Reborn. The thumbnail was a still frame of me and Sarah, tied to chairs, our faces frozen in expressions of pure terror. "No." I whispered, my stomach dropping. The stream began, and the distorted voice echoed once more, "The truth never dies." And now, it's your turn to watch. To this day, the channel continues to broadcast, its reach growing with every passing hour. They took Sarah. They'll take more. I tried to turn off my phone, but it wouldn't power down. The stream kept playing, filling my room with the distorted voice and the horrifying screams of a new victim, a man I didn't recognize, strapped to a chair. The masked figure loomed behind him, their movements deliberate and cruel as they wielded a blade. My hands trembled. I hurled the phone across the room, but the sound didn't stop. It echoed from the television, the laptop, even the speakers in the walls. Every device was playing the same stream, synced perfectly. You can't escape the truth, the voice hissed. The masked figure on the screen turned, staring directly at me through the lens. It's your turn. The lights in my apartment flickered. And then the power went out entirely. My heart pounded in the suffocating silence. I grabbed the nearest object, a metal wrench, and moved cautiously toward the door. It was locked. I hadn't locked it. A faint, rhythmic tapping came from the other side. Tap. 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 I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. The tapping stopped. Then came the voice, muffled but unmistakable, confess, or suffer. Suddenly, the television crackled back to life. The stream now showed me live. I was standing in my darkened apartment, clutching the wrench, my terrified expression filling the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, our star has returned, the distorted voice announced gleefully. The chat exploded with comments, make him pay. Show us the truth. Bring the pain. I stumbled back, the wrench slipping from my hand. The walls seemed to close in, the room warping and shifting like a living thing. The masked figure's voice boomed around me, impossibly close. Do you know why you're here? No. I screamed. Leave me alone. You've lied. Deceived. Used pain to entertain. Now, it's your turn to bleed for the truth. The room plunged into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, I was no longer in. I was strapped to a cold metal chair in a room that reeked of blood and despair. The same room where I'd once been tortured. In front of me was a monitor, showing a countdown. Live in 3 minutes. The masked figure appeared, their twisted voice dripping with malice. Your viewers are waiting. Let's give them a show. They held up a scalpel, the blade glinting under the harsh light. My screams echoed as they dragged it across my arm, carving words into my flesh. Liar. Blood streamed down, pooling on the floor. The countdown reached 0. The screen switched to the live stream, broadcasting my agony to millions. The chat lit up with glee. Cut deeper. No mercy. Show us what he's hiding. They didn't just hurt me, they made me confess. Every lie I'd told, every manipulation I'd used to grow my channel, every person I'd hurt along the way. With every confession, the torture escalated. A hot iron pressed against my chest, branding me with the channel's logo. My fingers were broken one by one, each crack followed by a wave of sadistic applause from the chat. The truth is painful, isn't it? The figure taunted, their gloved hand gripping my chin. But it's what they want. And you. You belong to them now. Days passed, or was it weeks? Time lost all meaning. I became their puppet, a plaything for their sick audience. They kept me alive just enough to keep performing. Feeding me scraps of food and water between sessions. But one day, something changed. The masked figure leaned close, their distorted voice dropping to a whisper. There's one way out. One final act. But it'll cost you everything. Desperation clawed at me. What do you want? They placed a knife in my hand, their gaze locked on mine. Them. Your audience. The ones who watch, who revel in the pain. Tapping grew louder, relentless, like a metronome of impending doom. My body refused to move, frozen in terror as the sound closed in. Then, it stopped. I forced myself to breathe, clutching the nearest object. A chair leg snapped in desperation. Slowly, I crept toward the front door. My reflection in the hallway mirror caught my attention. My face was pale, my eyes sunken. I didn't recognize myself anymore, but something else was wrong. The reflection wasn't just mine. Behind me, in the shadows, a figure loomed, a grotesque mask staring back with soulless eyes. I spun around, swinging the chair leg, but hit only air. The room was empty. The tapping resumed, now coming from the window. I backed away as the glass cracked, spiderwebbing outward. Something was on the other side, pressing its weight against the barrier. The tapping turned to pounding, and then, crash, the window shattered, and I was thrown to the floor by an unseen force. My head hit the edge of the table, the world spinning as I struggled to focus. Through the shards of glass, the masked figure emerged, crawling unnaturally on all fours. You thought you could escape us, but the audience demands more. They've seen your pain. But not enough. Never enough. They moved with inhuman speed, pinning me to the ground. The mask's grotesque features filled my vision as they pulled out a jagged knife. Its blade gleaming in the dim light. Scream for them, like you made others scream. The blade dug into my shoulder, twisting slowly. Pain exploded through my body, a fiery agony that brought tears streaming down my face, but I didn't scream, defiant. Good. It makes for better entertainment. They sliced deeper, each cut deliberate and slow, etching symbols into my skin. I gasped, choking on my own breath. Blood pooled beneath me, warm and sticky. The sound of a notification chimed, loud and mocking.
I looked up at the television. The live stream had returned, and the chat was alive with frenzy. He's weak. Make him beg. We want more. The figure grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at the screen. They're your fans. Everything you did was for them. Let's give them the ending they deserve. No. I croaked, barely audible. Oh, but yes. You'll die as they watch. And when you're gone, we'll find the next. There's always another willing to bleed for the truth. Summoning every ounce of strength, I drove my knee upward, catching them off guard. The blade clattered to the floor, and I scrambled toward it, ignoring the searing pain in my wounds. The figure lunged, but I swung wildly. The blade slicing through fabric and flesh. A distorted scream filled the room as they stumbled back. I didn't stop. I slashed and stabbed, each blow fueled by rage and desperation. Black liquid oozed from the wounds, the figure's body convulsing unnaturally. Finally, they collapsed, the mask falling from their face. But there was no face beneath it, only darkness. The room seemed to breathe, shadows twisting and crawling toward me. The screens around me flickered, showing the audience's reactions. No way. He killed it. What happens now? I staggered to my feet, gripping the knife tightly. The figure's body dissolved into smoke, vanishing as if it had never been there. But the voice remained, you can't kill the truth. You can only become part of it. The screens went black, and then a single word appeared in blood-red letters, next. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get out. The walls seemed to close in, the hallways stretching endlessly. Every door I opened led to another room of horrors. Torture devices, bloody remnants, and screams echoing from unseen victims. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was back in their domain. Run all you want, but you'll never escape. I burst through a door and found myself outside. The cool night air hit my face, but it didn't bring relief. The world outside wasn't normal. Screens lined every building, each one displaying the live stream. My face was plastered everywhere, a constant reminder of my torment. People passed by, their eyes glued to the screens, oblivious to my presence. I screamed for help, but no one reacted. They were entranced, consumed by the show, and then, the voice returned, louder than ever. You are the show. And the show must go on. A figure emerged from the shadows, wearing the same mask. But this time, there were dozens of them, all identical, all watching me with silent malice. Figures surrounded me, their masked faces cold and expressionless. My legs trembled, but I forced myself to stand, blood dripping from my wounds. The audience's cheers echoed in my head, a cacophony of sadistic delight. The leader stepped forward, holding a rusted machete. Their voice crackled, distorted yet filled with malice. The finale approaches. Give them what they crave. Beg, scream, and bleed for their entertainment. No, I whispered, my voice raw. I won't be your puppet anymore. They tilted their head, amused. You think you have a choice. You're nothing but content, a tool for the truth. I tightened my grip on the knife, adrenaline surging through me. Then let's give them an ending they'll never forget. I lunged at the leader, the blade in my hand slicing through their chest. Black ichor sprayed from the wound, but they didn't falter. Instead, they grabbed me by the throat and slammed me into the ground. Pain shot through my spine as the knife clattered away. The audience's laughter filled the air, taunting me, pathetic. You thought you could fight us? You belong to the truth now. But I wasn't finished. My hand found a shard of glass from the shattered window. As they loomed over me, I drove it into their neck. They let out an inhuman screech, releasing their grip. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the knife again. The other figures advanced, but I didn't hesitate. I slashed and stabbed. Each strike fueled by desperation and fury. The leaders staggered back, their form flickering like a broken video feed. The shadows around us twisted violently, the walls trembling as the digital world began to collapse. I turned to the nearest screen, now displaying the audience's horrified reactions. They weren't cheering anymore. Instead, their faces were filled with fear. You see them, don't you? The leader rasped, their voice distorted and cracking. They were never watching you. They were watching themselves. And now. They'll never look away. The figures dissolved into shadows, their screams merging with the sound of shattering glass. I stood alone in the wreckage, the knife still clutched in my hand. The screens were dark, the world eerily silent, and then, a single notification appeared on a nearby monitor. I staggered outside, breathing the cool night air. For the first time, it felt real, solid. The city was quiet, the screens blank. I thought it was over. Weeks passed, and I tried to return to normal life. But the memories haunted me, every cut, every scream, every shadow. And then, the notifications began again. It started on my phone, new live stream starting soon. Then my TV turned on by itself. Displaying the familiar blood-red words, my heart sank as I realized the screens weren't blank anymore. They were alive, broadcasting something worse, me. The audience had returned, their comments scrolling across every screen in my home. What's he going to do now? Let's see more pain. No escape. The truth had consumed me. I smashed the screens, but they reappeared. The audience always found a way back, demanding more. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the content. And somewhere, in the darkness of the digital void, the masked figures watched, waiting for the next show to begin. The truth never dies. And neither will I. The last shot fades to black, the sound of faint, distorted applause echoing in the distance. A blood-red title appears on the screen, coming soon, your turn.